Cousin called me at midnight to babysit her grown kids. I said no. Chaos followed. And now, I have a restraining order. It was a quiet Friday night in my Brooklyn apartment, and I was finally relaxing with an old sitcom when my phone buzzed at midnight. Then, at the stroke of midnight, my phone buzzed. I glanced at the caller ID and groaned. It was my cousin, Sandra. Now, Sandra and I have a bit of a history. We grew up together, thick as thieves back then. But adulthood revealed her tendency to use people like lifeboats whenever her ship started sinking. She had a knack for creating chaos and expecting others to clean it up. And tonight was no different. "Hey, Danny," Sandra began, her voice sugary sweet. Always a red flag. "Sandra, it's midnight. What's going on?" I asked, already bracing myself. "I need you to babysit the kids." Frowned. Her kids weren't exactly kids. Alex was 19, a college dropout who spent more time gaming than looking for a job, and Bella, at 17, was a rebellious high school senior who could probably outsmart half the adults in a courtroom. Oh, I just barely got up. It's been a pretty tough week. "Sandra, your kids are old enough to babysit themselves." "Danny, please. It's an emergency. I'm going on let's call it an important trip." "A trip? At midnight?" She stammered. Yeah, a weekend getaway for work." "Sandra, I'm not going to babysit your grown kids while you run off to who knows where." Her tone changed instantly, flipping like a switch. The sugary facade dissolved into icy venom. "You're seriously going to let family down?" "Fine, but don't say I didn't warn you," she hissed, her words more a threat than a plea, leaving no doubt about the manipulation at play. I hung up, rolled my eyes, and went back to my show. I thought that was the end of it. But I couldn't have been more wrong. The next morning I woke up to incessant banging on my door. My heart sank as I stumbled to answer, already guessing who it might be. When I opened it, there stood Alex and Bella, each clutching a duffel bag, their faces a mix of smugness and mischief that told me this was no misunderstanding. I froze for a moment, wondering how Sandra had managed to escalate things so quickly. "What are you doing here?" I asked. "Mom dropped us off," Bella said, her eyes flashing with mischief. "She said you'd take care of us." "Absolutely not," I replied, stepping aside to shoo them away. But before I could, Sandra's car screeched off down the street. "Great," I muttered. What followed was a whirlwind of chaos. Alex commandeered my living room with his gaming setup, yelling at his teammates as if they were in the next room. Bella, meanwhile, turned my kitchen into a TikTok studio, complete with loud music and glitter that somehow ended up everywhere. I called Sandra, but of course, her phone went straight to voicemail. Frustrated, I texted her, demanding she return. Her response? A selfie of her on a beach, cocktail in hand, captioned, "Can't talk, relaxing." By Sunday afternoon, I'd had enough. I told Alex and Bella they needed to leave. Bella smirked and said, "You'd better talk to Mom about that." So I packed up their bags, dropped them off at Sandra's house, and drove home. I thought I was finally free, but then Monday morning rolled around. I woke up to the sound of loud knocking. Standing at my door were two police officers. "Mr. Daniels, we've had a report of abandonment and endangerment." "What?" I sputtered. "Who reported that?" "Sandra Marshall. She's claiming you left her children alone at an unsafe location." "Sandra Marshall?" I explained the situation, but Sandra's story had already spiraled into a web of lies. She claimed her innocent children were traumatized by my neglect. To make matters worse, Bella had filmed herself pretending to cry in a corner, and Alex had taken staged photos of an empty fridge. She had taken the photos before she left for work, and I'd never be able to get her back without her ultimate success on the standard board. I hoped she had escaped French photos of an empty fridge. Sandra wasn't just doubling down, she was going for gold. I felt a mix of disbelief and fury as I learned she had filed for a restraining order against me, accusing me of unpredictable behavior and claiming she feared for her family's safety. The sheer audacity left me reeling, and I couldn't help but wonder how far she'd go to twist the narrative. The kicker? She'd brought Bella to the hearing to testify about the horrors of being left in my care. The judge saw right through her act. He denied the restraining order, but issued a stern warning to both of us. This family drama needs to stay out of my courtroom. Despite winning that small victory, the damage was done. My relationship with Sandra was irreparably damaged, and my reputation in the family took a hit. To this day, she spins the story to anyone who will listen, painting me as the villain. And me? I've learned my lesson. The next time Sandra calls, whether it's at midnight, noon, or any other time, I'll be hitting the ignore button. Some battles aren't worth fighting, and sometimes the best way to preserve your sanity is to let people like Sandra dig their own holes while you watch from a safe distance.